Hello and welcome everybody to Impacts of COVID-19 and Opportunities for the Advertising Television Industry around the world. Thank you for joining us. My name is Gerardo Kerik and I will be your host and moderator today. I spent over 15, almost over 18 years working in the TV industry, in Disney and in Warner. The last 3 years managing my own agency. And this is an industry that I love. And I'm very, very pleased to have this amazing group together to have a conversation. This webinar is brought to you by WSI and is part of an educational series that we launched when COVID-19 hit us. It is intended to be a video conversation with industry experts where we brainstorm and exchange ideas and suggestions with the intention to help businesses, colleagues, and partners navigate the current crisis. Today, as you know, we will discuss the impact of COVID-19 for the TV ad industry. Please go to our website, wsidigitalboost.com, to learn about our past and upcoming webinars. The next one is in 2 weeks, and it will be on how to increase effectiveness of your advertising and drive more revenue online. So if you have an e-commerce portal or you need to acquire customers or subscribers to the OTT or on-demand service, you will get a lot of value from our next webinar too, okay? So as you know, we're all connected from home. We talked about that, so therefore, allow us to have some technical difficulties if that happens. And please write on the comment sections, what is your industry and the main challenge you have during COVID-19 that made you want to attend this webinar. That's going to help us some information, get some information about you. Now, I'd like to introduce our panel. So today we have, and I'm going to allow each of them to introduce their organizations, but I'm just going to introduce them first. We have Enrique Martinez. He's chairman of the board at the Latin American Media and Advertising Council. We also have Sean Cunningham, president and CEO of the Video Advertising Bureau. Louis Boswell, CEO of AVIA, representing Asia, the Asia Video Industry Association. And Kathy Roberfroy. She's Director General of EGTA, the International Association of Television and Radio Ad Sales Companies out of Europe. So, Henry, why don't you introduce LAMAC first before we start the conversation? We go Henry, Sean, Louis, and Kathy to introduce themselves, and then we'll start the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Gerardo. Pleasure to be here, and thank you all for joining. LAMAC was founded back in 2002, so we're going into our 18th year here, and its keen focus is on advertising in Latin America. So it focuses on promoting the values of premium television advertising throughout the region. So great to be here, and thanks for hosting it, Arthur.
Thank you, Henry. Sean?
Hi, Sean Cunningham, President and CEO of the VAB. VAB is an insights company. It serves 1,000 marketing executives who are member subscribers. And we're in the business of answering their unanswered questions about advertising, marketing, video, all the topics you could imagine under that umbrella. Including in our membership is also all of the programmers, publishers, distributors of multi-screen TV premium video, as well as members of the full ecosystem for the entire advertising video industry, as well as cinema advertising. Everything having to do with video advertising insights for marketers is what we do.
Fantastic, thank you. Louis.
Louis Boswell, I'm the CEO of the Asia Video Industry Association. I'm based here in Singapore. Asia is a big place. I'm a little bit jealous. I mean, Europe's a big place, America's a big place, but I'm going to be talking tonight about Asia, which is so many different countries and so many different stories, so that almost anything I say is going to be true in some country. But AVIA is we're the industry body for the premium video industry in Asia. We're a non-profit association. Our role is to do everything that we can to make a healthier ecosystem and industry for our members. So within that, we focus on government relations and policy advocacy. We are at the cold face of the battle against video piracy. And we bring the industry together to talk about the business models that make us work. And obviously the topic tonight, advertising, is really one of the 2 key business models to monetize video. So it's absolutely central to what we do.
Thank you. Thank you. Kathy.
And I'm Katy, I'm the Director General of EXA. As you said, we are a network of companies that monetize content and sell advertising with 153 members currently across 43 markets, most of them in Europe, but we have members across all 5 continents, but created in Europe at first. I'm based in Brussels, the team is based in Brussels, but as I said, the network is made up of all those senior executives. And the objectives are pretty much the same as what Louis just described. It's helping our members better serve the needs of advertisers through exchange of best practice, proper lobbying of the institutions that are based in Brussels, and so on.
Fantastic. So this is a truly global conversation. We have Brussels, Singapore, Miami, New York, Atlanta, and then people joining from all over the world. So that's fantastic. So let's start the conversation. Let's go to the meat and potatoes, right? So let's talk about consumer behavior trends, right? People are in lockdown now. They're staying at home. What's going on with consumer behavior towards TV advertising? What can you tell us? Sean, why don't you start with that?
You know, what I've been talking about has been everything we've observed through all the viewership trends and everything. And I'm going to talk about 2 distinct periods, and I'll hit them both. But I think where we've evolved to in terms of these, terrific conduits in our households, these screens that give us, world-class information and entertainment, they're a food group now in these households. I mean, for, a population that is at home with minimal movement, I think that this content, these conduits, these screens are a huge part of how people are getting through. People before COVID were multi-screen device athletes and were relentless, editors of video content. I think those habits have increased exponentially in terms of usage. They're just doing more video, more different types of video from, if you want to think about the statistics, what we know is that, if you will, in the States, we have a, very large scale audience in terms of penetration. We have only 10% broadband only homes, and the rest are served by multi-channel television in one way or another. So we have an enormous scale is how we started. So then we got a 20 to 30% surge on top of that in terms of an audience. So we've got scale on top of scale. In the beginning, it really was about getting the best possible news and about, if you will, escapism, entertainment, comfort, that kind of thing. As it's moved on, I think what we're seeing is as you're into week 5 and, beyond that in the States now of, at home, this world-class content, the connection to it, and, all of the behaviors, whether it's, social, that type of thing, are integral to how people are getting through this experience. And it's how they're connecting, it's what they're commenting on. Obviously, there's a ton of live consumption. And through all the different ways that you can distribute premium video on a screen, we're seeing these device athletes just gobbling up every more video. So I think it's, when people look back to COVID, they will look back to premium video as a lifesaver mechanism for how they got through it sanely.
Yeah. Does the rest of the panel see similar trends in the regions? I don't know, Henry?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think we echo. I think the dynamics are different. Of course, we don't have the level of scale that Sean speaks about. Right, penetration of premium video or multi-channel penetration is give or take around 50, a little bit over 50% on a generalized throughout the region. So the scale is not quite the same as it is in the U.S. However, I think we're experiencing a time period with people being in the safeguarded home lockdown situations where they're exploring more and more about what the options are on their premium video services that are being provided. And as a result of that, there is a significant increase on the utilization of that in the same way that Sean is describing, both on the primary screen, if you will, the traditional television screen, and also on secondary screens.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes down to premium video itself, I mean, the whole category of television overall is significantly up. But when it comes down to premium video itself, we're seeing levels of increases in viewership share. In Argentina, about 27%, in Brazil up 22%, in Chile up 37%, Colombia is up 42%. Mexico's up 18%. So we're seeing increases throughout every single one of the key markets throughout the region, that are pretty significant.
Yeah, and
Maybe
just for the benefit of the audience, Kari, and I'm gonna go
Sure.
back to you. Just for the benefit of the audience, when we're talking about premium video in this conference, and when we refer to TV, we're not referring to the one screen in the living room. We're talking about across all screens where TV would be distributed, right? So it could be a VOD, or it could be also an OTT service, over-the-top service that a network might have already launched. So yes, Kari, go back to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, much of the same, obviously, lots of TV viewing, lots of viewing, co-viewing also, people getting back around a big TV screen. You were just asking just now. Lots of consumption also on all other screens. Maybe the two things worth mentioning is the increase in the audiences across all age groups, even the young people and the kids who have been not deserting TV, but supposedly spending all their time on social media are back on TV with big jumps, and also shifts across day parts. So we have times of days where the increase in audiences are much higher. Like take the morning, for example, for obvious reason because people are locked down. But there's interesting shifts there, which are interesting for consumers, but also for advertisers to know.
Of course. Let me, Louis, I don't know if you have anything to add to these questions, or we move to the next question, and I can go back to you first.
I mean, I'll just say one thing very quickly, which is, I mean, essentially we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing an explosion in content consumption, and that's across all premium video delivery mechanisms. So it's free to air, it's pay TV, it's premium OTT. And unfortunately, especially in this part of the world, it's also piracy. I mean, we're seeing big spikes in pirated content and illegal downloads. So I mean, I'm glad to say it's not solely in that area. It's equal opportunity, but there's an uplift in whatever way that people do watch video. There's an uplift in it, and a big one.
Sure. So what it's interesting, and I know from the conversation we had yesterday and from all the research that we've been sharing, that the growth is happening across all ages, right? So even people who did not used to watch TV or live TV in the past, maybe younger generations, are now sampling it and are discovering it, almost because of the situation. Do you see this as a maybe a new chance for TV to gain that new audience now that it's sampling new shows and it's sampling new content to what they were doing before?
I think that what we've always known about consumers and viewers is that they're going to default to the best available screen, right? And
Sean, you're freezing up.
Hello?
I can hear you well.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying that what we've always known about all generations of consumers is that they're going to default to the best available screen. And so, yeah, I mean, you've seen, and we distribute content with a very simple philosophy, which was arm's length, moment's notice for world-class content. So you have to put it wherever they want it. And the fact is that we are an extremely mobile society. And so now what you've got is people who, they do watch 64-inch set. They also watch an awful lot on their phones and iPads. They watch all different types of content, right? But now they're having the opportunity to do more sampling of the best available screen, which is very the largest screen in the house.
Yeah.
And with respect to long-term behavior, I mean, you think about it like a marketer thinks about anything else. What does trial do? Trial induces loyalty and behaviors and things like that. So I think the mass sampling of the best available screen, and still within the paradigm of every screen option, is going to have a lingering effect. And I think everybody wins in that. I think the consumer wins, and I think the marketer wins in that.
Yeah, and the advertiser too. What does the rest of the panel think about that? Is it a trend that you think is going to change the dynamics of consumption going forward after COVID?
I think there certainly is. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, Kathy.
I was just going to say there certainly is an opportunity to keep those audiences. It's just doing it the right way by looking at what they're looking for at the moment. There's been a lot of spontaneously newly created types of programming to meet the crisis. First, because some of the broadcasters lost some of their programming, and I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute, the sports and the cultural events and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
The TV has had in this era to reinvent itself by putting up new programs, filming from home, involving stars from different parts who are on TV and activating the network. And that's something that is probably a bit more like what young people are looking for. So they're finding it on TV now. So maybe there's lessons to be learned there also in terms of the type of programming that we put on air,
yeah,
and how we involve the young people to make them stay on those platforms. It doesn't have to be the central TV screen in the living room. Regardless of the screen, they've showed an interest, and it's up to us to keep it.
Yeah. Very, very good. Let me go ahead, Louis.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, I mean, I think I'm not entirely convinced that in many of our markets, this is going to have a lasting impact in terms of the change in behavior, in terms of the device, the way you access the content. I mean, there's obviously a cross-pollination, so that there is the situation where you're having more people sitting down in front of the big screen perhaps than there was before, because families are locked in the same household. But I mean, we have a lot of markets which are not really considered television first markets. They're mobile first markets. If you look at the sort of the likes of Indonesia or the Philippines, the principal screen is the small one in your hand. It's not the one in your living room.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in those communities, the sort of the exploration of content is really coming from that I'm saying it's not a second screen, but it's coming from the mobile device, the smart device.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I mean, you're still seeing, I mean, primarily the television set is a free-to-air service in many markets. There is pay television, obviously, all around the region, but it's not anywhere near the penetration that you see in markets like the US or even many countries in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So people of all ages are discovering the mobile device and discovering new services and new ways of consuming content. So to some degree, I think it's just accelerating trends that were sort of naturally happening already, just through the fact that people now have the time to spend more time consuming content.
Sure. Henry.
Yeah, look, I think this notion of exploration, if you will, and identification of new content, it's, people have the time now to explore beyond the, sort of traditional 8 or 10 or 12 channels that they traditionally watched. So whatever screen that they may be approaching this on, I think it is a time of exploration, the time of learning about new networks and new premium categories of offering, of video offerings. As a result of that, we are seeing it throughout the region. We are seeing dramatic growth and increases on the viewership. The ratings at this point in time on premium video are the highest that they've been in 6 years. And as I said, in terms of the overall category, when you look at television overall, we're seeing viewership spikes that are significantly higher than any World Cup. And you know how popular the World Cups are in the Latin American region. We're seeing higher viewership shares from any of the recent Olympics that we've had, including the Summer Olympic in Rio a few years ago. So I think the answer to your question is I do believe that this is a great opportunity for broadcasters to reach an audience that hasn't been exposed to their networks before, and as a result, of course, of these dramatic increases in viewership, it's a significant and a great value from an advertiser's perspective to expose their brands and their products as well.
So on the topic of advertisers, and I'll continue. It's a follow-up question to you, Henry, and then and to the panel in general. We know that networks around the world are reporting also a hit in advertising revenues, right? Because a lot of clients are trying to reshuffle their budgets, but they also are reporting larger audiences, like we just talked about, right? And at the same time, there's a third variable happening. So more audience, a reduction in advertising revenue, and also a reduction in production because they had to stop to put in hiatus some of the productions they were going on. So what does that mean for the future of programming? we see that there's a lot of efficiency programming trend going on right now. People are having to dig into their libraries and they're having to rethink new ideas like Kathy was talking about. So what does that mean for TV programming going forward?
Well, okay, I'll say 2 points on that, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues here. But look, I think that there's deep, vast libraries of content, and even a lot of fresh content that's sitting, let's say throughout the production pipeline far enough along that it's ready to go to editing and audio mastering, et cetera, and get on the air. So I think there's still a deep resource from that perspective. That said, is this something that is sustainable for the long term? No, you certainly want a certain amount of fresh original content to be putting up on the air. But given the fact that there's a lot of new exploration going on, as I described previously, I think that these deep libraries that these large media companies have providing this premium video is going to be reaching consumers, like Katty was responding to before, different age groups and on different screens. That are for the first time exposed. So in a way, this is prime time it's a new release for them because it's content that they may have never seen before. So I think it continues to be a great opportunity from that perspective, and hopefully the production machines will ramp up in the not too distant future so that we can get the new fresh content rolling again. But I think there's a vast supply of that at this point in time.
So it's almost resetting the value of some of those libraries, right, Sean?
Well, if I'm a marketer, what do I care about? What I care about, and yes, I'm cognizant of the fact that there's been a short-term disruption in the cycle of which original programming is going to be created and distributed. Cognizant of the fact that there's been a disruption in sporting events and and that type of thing. But if I'm a marketer, what do I care about? I care about getting to my customers in scale. And something that they're emotionally connected with, will put the right message, the right stimuli in front of the right customer base at the right time. Those principles are unchangeable through everything we're going through. And and to Henry's point, there is no red and blue labeled content. Here is the content that you'll like, and here's the red replacement content. Don't be fooled. But you've got world-class content, as Henry said, deep episodic movie libraries. And like, for example, what you're finding is that all those people that had been watching sports within, a sport genre classification have redistributed themselves over other premium content. So marketer, right? I've got the scale I want. I got the attention I want, all right? And what I'm going to do now, because I've got these phenomenal data tools and I've got world-class media companies with phenomenal data tools, is that it allows me to accelerate some of the trends that are in the marketplace, like audience-based buying, like all of the different ways that you can use the tool chest to connect with specific groups. So I think the accelerant of, the forward-leaning technologies that marketers and television programming and distributing companies were already on their way to, I think that helps accelerate this. But, again, if I'm a marketer, and you talk about how there's the advertising market is going to be down. Well, time will tell, because what we've got is a lot of people who jumped right in, did a whole bunch of COVID advertising, knew what they wanted to do. Now we're 5 weeks down the road, and we're seeing a lot of companies that are ready to leap back in the right way on their own terms. So how far it winds up being down in terms of advertising trends, only time will tell. It's going to be different going forward. But the thing I like the most about it is the acceleration of the best tools in our tool chests to be able to find those audiences at scale who are leaning in and make a differentiating message at the right time.
Excellent. Let me change the question a little bit for Louis and Katty to add into the context. And after that, we'll move into TV advertising and what's going on the revenue side, because I see a lot of questions from an audience interested in knowing about that, right? So Louis, Katty, if you could comment a little bit more about what we're just talking, right? But the fact that now the role of TV has changed to the concept of emotional distraction, right? It's almost virtual cultural programs that are happening on the screen, and because people cannot connect are connected on social media, right? So people are commenting on social media, but they're watching together, like the One World concert last weekend and different events that are happening around the world. So how is that changing the role of TV in social interaction? And how do you see that playing out for advertisers as well?
I don't know, Louis, if you want to go first. The one thing I would say, people use TV for two things, essentially. You mentioned the emotional connection and the need to be moved and distracted. There's the news element that's, to me, is most important still. I think the one reason first why people turn to TV is because TV is the most trusted source of information and news currently. And of course, distraction and emotional connection is the second one. I think the one opportunity for TV is to use the power it has to be the one that triggers the discussions that go on social networks and continue there. And I think that's where people are looking for inspiration also. So if you want to launch a big movement or a big, I don't know if it's being done across the world, but in Europe and in several countries, we have people standing out on their balconies every day at 8 o'clock in the evening. I don't know if that's done elsewhere, but the entire population goes out on their balconies and claps for all the hospital workers and the people who are taking care. That started on TV and is commented and picked up every day on social networks. So there's a central role there for TV to be the one to initiate some of those movements. But clearly there's lots of food for conversation that starts there and continues then on social network.
So there's a concept of alone together,
Actually
right?
we actually know the numbers. We actually know the numbers on social, if you will. I mean, this is something that we actively track, and the VAB's done this for marketers because they've always been interested in the interplay between social media and TV.
Mm-hmm.
So, we track on a night-by-night basis the top trending Twitter topics. Twitter isn't everything, but it's a consistent, robust, census-based conversational metric about what the country's talking about. And right now we can tell you through the first 5 weeks that 72% of all the top 10 trending Twitter conversations have been about ad-supported television, not video, not television, ad-supported
television.
71% of the conversations. And again, everyone is using all of their video conduits and content, but I think that, one of the things that the business press got wrong is they said, look, this is going to be a boom for Netflix. I'm watching more Netflix. I think everyone's watching more Netflix. But with respect to, again, scale of consumers, what you're seeing is that 1% of the conversation on Twitter is about a Netflix topic. 71% is about ad-supported TV.
Wow. So people are watching
very carefully.
So
it's telling on scale.
So that's a fascinating topic. So Louis, if we talk, taking into account what Sean and Kari just said, from an advertiser perspective, right? Consumers are turning to brands for, in many cases, for reassurances during these uncertain times. We see that advertisers are actually changing their creative or coming out with new creative, and they want to hear how companies are responding to the crisis. So, do you have a perspective about what kinds of messaging is resonating right now for audiences in terms of advertising?
I think from the research that we're seeing in Asia, some of the things that people are wanting to see are that advertisers understand what's going on, and they're showing a level of corporate responsibility, and they're showing that they're taking care of their employees. I think there's quite a strong desire that advertising remains and continues. I mean, so much has changed in the world already that, I mean, if there was no advertising and nobody was sort of advertising their products and services, then I think people would be even more spooked. So, I mean, go back to the point that you were making about sort of relying on video and television for sort of emotional support in these times. I think that extends to advertising as well. People want to see that the world is still turning and that people are still selling their services. We're seeing that a sense of humor. So advertising that can lift our spirits is something that's appreciated. Now, I mean, you've got to be tactful and you've got to be delicate about how you go about doing that. But we're seeing that sort of resonate with people. But there's no desire that we're seeing in any research that people don't want advertising. or saying that there's sort of get rid of the advertising. I mean, the advertising is there. Clearly, we're seeing that in some categories, advertising is falling off a cliff. But then in other categories, we're seeing it sort of perform really strongly. So, I mean, unsurprisingly, I mean, if you look at the pay TV sector in our region, pay TV sector relies quite heavily on regional advertising, and a lot of those regional budgets come from tourism boards, airlines, that sector. So clearly, there's been a big impact there, and that's a big negative. But then when you look at the advertising for food and drinks and for health and fitness products, I mean, that's going through the roof. Now, they may not, it's different in every country, and the medium that you choose to deliver that message is going to be a little bit different. So we're seeing a lot of positivity coming out of ad-supported premium video services, so AVOD, OTT services, if you will, where those sectors are clearly growing. And so I think it's a really nuanced picture of what's going on in the advertising space, but it's not a question of content consumption's up through the roof and advertising's through the floor. That is not the case. There are elements of that within categories and within countries, and within media, but it's a far more subtle and nuanced picture, and there are lots of positive stories coming out of this at the moment as well.
So Henry, if I'm an advertiser, why should I continue investing in TV, right? What are the benefits of maintaining this advertising continuity right now?
Yeah, it's a practical question, right? And I think taking on Louis' cues here and some of the things he was talking about, I think it's a time to be creative. I think it's a time to be very sensitive in the environment that we're with, so that the messaging has to be very appropriate. But if the messaging is appropriate, then in answer to your question, I think it is hugely impactful. And certainly if you look at it from a CPM perspective, there's great value to be had as well, because of the significant increase in audience levels. It depends on how the advertising is traded, of course, and then varies market by market. But generally in Latin America, that would be a significantly add-on value in terms of how the interactions are conducted commercially. In terms of creativity, I think this is a time for advertisers to be flexible, to be creative. I think, and to a certain degree in content as well, that will drive it. And organizations have to be more nimble as they move forward to capitalize on the right messaging, to develop the right messaging and put it out there quickly. One fantastic example of this that comes to my mind, Louis was talking about tourism advertising being down. I remember a recent, let's call it 4 weeks ago, there was a dramatic and super impactful change in the way that Mexico tourism was promoting itself. What they did is just change the messaging around what they were doing rather than pull the campaign off the air. And it basically leaves you with this very impactful, beautiful images of Mexico, the country at large, and says, after all this, we will be waiting for you. It's an incredibly powerful tagline and a great approach. So I think at the end of the day, with these increased audience levels that we're having, it really is about messaging, appropriate messaging, and customizing your media, your approach to being having an impactful campaign.
Yeah, it's there's numerous examples, right? Guinness did the same. I think Guinness, with their most recent campaign, has achieved the highest sentiment levels of all their ads in decades, and that's an advertiser that has been investing and actually doing very good creative for a long time. Sean, what's your take on this?
Right.
It's picking up.
Sorry, Henry.
I think Caddy was about to jump in on something there.
Sorry,
No,
Caddy.
It's just one of our members beautifully summarized, I think, the kind of creatives that people expect these days. They've certainly voiced, and the research shows that consumers and viewers do not mind the advertising, and they actually want the brands to refer to the crisis they're going through and not pretend it's not happening. But one of our members from Italy was saying there's actually 5 categories of messages that are going down really well. Some of them are the move that they call step back. It's just when the brand message takes second step, and it's no longer about their brand and what they're doing, but more or less how they care about society. There's all those ads that are reassuring and that tell the consumers, we're still there, we're there for you, our products are there for you, and they can help you through this. There's brands that decide to express nearness to the population, that voice thanks to the caretakers and the people who guarantee the good running of the economy. There's those that take the governmental measures to a higher level and make sure that the people respect the social distancing and all these measures. And finally, those that are about a new normal, all the good things you can do in a lockdown situation, all the things that are now possible that weren't possible before, and focus on that. And all 5 categories are doing extremely well, being extremely creative. And one measure taken by TV stations and ad sales companies in Europe is that a lot of the companies are given that advice for free, and even sometimes a few seconds of additional advertising to help the advertisers change the message and adapt to the situation, just making sure that they're in line with what consumers expect.
That's fantastic, Sean. Before I go to you, because I want your take on this one, I'm going to launch a poll just so we know where people are coming from. So I'm launching this poll; people can see it, and go ahead, Sean.
I've got a 2-part answer to that question. I find this maybe the most fascinating parts of our discussion today. We track the number of COVID campaigns that have been launched on a weekly basis. And I don't want to just talk about COVID. We want to talk about COVID advertising and advertising in general. But as of last Monday, 253 different COVID campaigns have been launched in 15 different industries. And what's interesting there is the jump each week. That was 90 new campaigns from the week before. And frankly, what a lot of my programming members and distribution members have been doing behind the scenes is working 24/7 with advertisers to, in record time, get COVID-themed, messaging up. And because it is not 2-3 categories. Okay, so we started with autos, and we started with government and that kind of thing. Well, now you're talking about insurance and retailers and home and food and beverage, and so what we're getting into is the realization among marketers, and it's what I call, don't mistake, the disruption, a temporary disruption in your selling channel as, that you don't have the opportunity to do business. You're actually, for your brand building potential right now is very interesting, right? You can not only talk to your existing customer base, you can talk to your aspirational customer base, you can talk to all your constituents. And so what we're seeing is, you've got even some categories that are thought to be, they don't seem to be COVID specific. They're not, emotionally top of mind. And folks are jumping in where there's no participants in the category with COVID messaging. And their opportunity to get a brand halo off of that, so long as you can connect emotionally, have the credentials, and genuinely have got a credible way to say we're part of the solution, people are wide open to this. And in the States, what you're seeing is inside of in terms of a commercial rotation between programming, I don't know that I've seen a single pot of programming that didn't have at least 1 to 2 COVID-themed ads in it. And so what you're seeing is people who are really smartly doing a lot of long-term brand building and long-term business with a lot of constituencies and a wide customer base, despite the fact that they've got a short disruption in their selling channel, maybe longer, it depends on the category. But there's an empirical answer to this as well, and that's why advertise, during this unprecedented tough economic time. We are releasing on, I believe, May 5th, we've gone back and we've gone through 100 years worth of recessions in the United States. Mm-hmm. Really through the last 6 recessions. And we have all the empirical data. We've drawn it from over 30 sources. Our goal was for marketers and advertisers to have a one-stop shop guide, about 25 pages long, coming out in early May. And if you want to look at it from an MBA perspective about what the advantages are of advertising during an economic downturn, it's staggering in terms of share gains and all the other key health metrics versus brands that either go to austerity or they're dormant or they get out of advertising. And we have brand specific, category specific examples in there. So, if people are wondering, is there a case out there for why advertise in economic downturn? This is more than a recession. We've got a one-stop shop thing, and all the empirical data in the States is there. We just had to gather it together.
That's fascinating. Let me just show the results of the poll, right? So we have over 300 people answering the poll. Let me see if we can. Can you all see it on the screen? You can't. Share results. There you go.
There we go.
Sorry about that. So we have around 49% of people attending are either from, it's a content producer, a TV group or a studio. 5% are coming from ad agencies, 20% from media agencies, 5% from research, 6% are advertisers, and 15% it's other. I would assume there may be consultants or technology or service providers. So I guess knowing this audience, right? It's very, and I see some of the questions that we have on the chat. It's all about how do we keep what tactics could we use to keep clients media buys and investments, and what advice can we give to clients on how to use their investment effectively right now? So what would you say to people who are concerned about the state of their clients and their investment? Who wants to take this first?
I'll take it first if you want me to.
Okay, good.
All right, so, and it's maybe because I have a client-centric background. So I spent the last 18 years running the VAB Insights Group. 18 years before that was running ad agencies. So
Excellent.
know intimately, the dynamic of, what you're the investment counselor, you're the psychologist, you're also the person with the best empirical data.
Of course.
And, to me, the thing to do right now, I would say is, do you have reasons to connect with a COVID message? You don't need to have one. You can use, if you will, straight brand advertising. But what I would talk to clients about is this, out of this terrible tragedy has come this unique opportunity where one of the human commonalities is this heightened consumption of all this world-class content and programming, and that it's all demographics. So my counsel to them would, first of all, for their long-term brand health, I would make sure that they have a way of connecting emotionally and credibly with as wide an audience as they can. It's a great time to do the things you've always wanted to do. I think it's a great time because, in terms of messaging concepts, you want to connect with specific groups. If you've got the data, every consumer group you could want to talk to is, if you will, discoverable within this massive. The other thing I would sit there and say is that the unique opportunity is, because there are people on the sidelines who are figuring out what to do next, the ability to message while others in your category are dormant doesn't come around that often. I would take advantage of it. And I think that we are in a state where there is a desire to connect with entities that are part of the solution, either through, just great straight emotional advertising that people like, or the belief that you are part of the solution in terms of COVID. I think a mistake is to decide that you are going to sit out a quarter, or that you're going to take another look at it next month. I think this is a fluid situation. And I think that if you have not got a communication strategy and you're not ready to put up creative inside of 48 hours notice, you're missing a huge opportunity. And, you look at all of the different kinds of creative iterations that have happened. People are not sending crews to New Zealand to shoot, world-class footage, but they're finding the unique ways to emotionally connect with audiences. So I think the biggest mistake anyone could do right now is to take a quarter off, sit it out, either because, well, my channel's down, nothing to sell. You could be doing tons of business. And also, by the way, your category dynamics are different. The audience dispersion is different. Go connect in scale with the groups that you've always wanted to send X or Y message. Use audience-based buying. I think, again, it's a terrible tragedy. It's a very interesting, marketing environment.
Sure.
I'm very excited
go ahead, Henry.
to see this study that Sean is talking about. I'm sure it has. I'm sure it will be applicable not only in the U.S. but on a global basis. Because at the end of the day, brand building And building brand value is a long-term, proposition that gives you a lot of strength and enables you to increase your market share, whereas brands that may sit out will lose market share. So I think it would be very exciting to see that. And I also think, in the recent past, a lot of the advertising has been, sort of performance-based. What's the immediate result? What are we going to get, tomorrow from this? And we've kind of lost the focus on the importance and the value of creating that relationship, that longer-term relationship with the consumer. So I think this is a great opportunity to adapt here, to be creative, to be nimble. About this kind of messaging and look at it again a little bit more of a longer term focus of how can you, in the context of this environment and these high level viewership opportunities, get your brand reinforced and get your brand in a position where it will gain market share. And I'm sure I'm I guess projecting here a little bit into what we'll see from this great study over 100 years of declines in economic implications and what the results are coming out of it. But I would expect that we will see many examples of brands who went aggressive versus brands who held back, as Sean was saying, sat out a quarter or sat out 2 quarters, and the level of market share increases that the brands who went aggressive were able to gather and benefit from for the longer term.
Of course, it's a great time to invest. Louis.
I was just going to say, I think what we're seeing in Asia is the opportunity for advertisers to really shape the way the industry develops. And what I mean by that is, linear continues to be a sort of big part of the ecosystem here, but streaming is just taking off in leaps and bounds. And when you look at premium content, I think the big, still to be fully answered question is, what is the business model behind that? Is it subscription, or is it advertising, or is it a combination of the two? And clearly what we're saying at the moment with everyone staying at home is the subscription side is booming like never before. We're seeing services like Netflix increase their numbers enormously. Regional services like View are going through the roof on the subscription side. But somebody like View are interesting because they, unlike Netflix, they look to both advertising and subscription. Now, if you look around the region and you look at the history of pay television, the penetration levels of pay television only ever got to a certain level. And so one might argue that you're never going to get to 100% SVOD OTT services or for premium video in some of our markets. And so that ad sector is going to become more and more important. And I think we've been seeing that over the last sort of 12, 18 months, that it's been sort of beginning to explode. And we're still seeing it growing at the moment. Even, through the month of March, we've seen big numbers, programmatic video advertising on premium video OTT services has continued to increase in totality. It's not exploding at the same level as perhaps it would be if we didn't have sort of COVID around. But I think there's a real first mover advantage here. And those advertisers that see the opportunity of the way that the industry is changing and are prepared to sort of fasten their sales to that, I think are going to be long-term beneficiaries. And so a lot of people in these categories that we're talking about who tend to be on the more creative side of the industry anyway, when it comes to the sort of execution of their ads, I think for those people, if they've got the sort of the foresight and the appetite to really see that sort of premium video streamed on services in this part of the world is only going in one direction, there's a huge opportunity for them to make a real impact.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have questions coming from the audience, and some of them are specific to an attendee. Some of them are just general. So if you are okay with me, panelists, why don't we start answering those, right? And please keep sending them. So Jean, I don't know where Jean writes us from, but his question is, how do you get the current message about TV's performance to advertisers? This webinar preaches to the converted. How do we reach the right decision makers with this message? Any advice for Jean? for John?
Well, I mean, we distribute directly to a total database of 30,000 advertising agencies and marketing executives. I think that the distribution of this is, there's a hunger for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can talk to your neighbor and they'll tell you that television consumption. But if you want to be able to use it strategically, and you want to use something that are sort of industry standard metrics, I mean, go to a site like mine. Go, send your clients to to the VAB.com.
The VAB.com. Yeah.
That's why we exist. That's why we exist. We're a focal distribution point of that type of information.
I think this is a question that's going to be all the more relevant now in a crisis. This is a question that we ask ourselves a lot in our organization. Who do we talk to put the arguments across? Do you talk to the CEOs of companies? Do you talk to the marketing officers? Do you talk to the procurement people? And I think in a time where people and companies are in crisis and where everybody will be looking for more cents and more dollars to save and reinvest in the development of their companies, it's really important that people understand this need for branding, to stay connected to the viewer, to stay connected to the consumers. And it's going to be of utter importance that they don't just slash in those budgets just because this is a difficult time from an economic perspective. It's now that you actually build a brand that will survive today and tomorrow. And every data, and I'm sure, Sharon, the data you're picking together will show exactly the same thing, that branding element is just vital. And now is the time when we put that message across. But we know that there's lots and lots and lots of research, lots and lots of data that proves that. The problem is convincing the people at a time when they're counting pennies and counting dollars, especially in such a time. So it's not going to be.
I think one of the convincers is the fact that you've got, if you're in a category and you've got, you have 12 major players, and 3 of them right now have got emotionally connecting branding messages. That tells you everything you need to know if you're one of the ones who is waiting to do what to do next, right? And they're doing business while you're on the sidelines. I'm not sure if we've got categories right now that are dark. To me, there's self-evident, reasons why brand building, advertising, and emotionally connecting and doing business over the long term for the long-term health has become self-evident in this country to most of the major categories. So to me, I would ask the question, well, why are we so, what are we afraid of with respect to, if we're sitting around and not advertising right now? It's clear that every week, as we said, we had 90 new campaigns in 1 week. People are getting this opportunity.
Yeah. Excellent.
I agree. I mean, I think we've got the data and we've got the stories. There's all the evidence why you should be advertising. I mean, my experience of trying to persuade advertisers to do things is that advertisers are going to do what the advertiser wants to do. It's very hard to get a media buyer to do exactly what you want to do. But I think that, as we just discussed, I think those clients, those brands, those agencies, those media buyers who are smart and perceptive will see the evidence, they'll understand, they'll come to their own conclusions, regardless of whether we tell them or not.
Excellent. Henry, our dear friend Patricio, I'll let you answer this question, and then I'll come to the next question that I think it's addressed to you. So go ahead. I
mean, I got nothing to add. I think it's all well stated by my colleagues here. So go ahead. What's Patricio?
So our good friend Patricio says, working at home has increased enormously, and it is expected that after quarantine, it will be a habit for large and small companies to continue with this modality. Is this a factor that will change the advertising in media? What will affect, how will it affect, what will affect more, linear or digital TV or social media?
I think it's probably an all around. I mean, let's go to the first part of it. I would expect that this question about what are the longer term habits here, I think it will accelerate a lot of changes. And one of them is the aspect of people feeling comfortable with the notion of working from home, whether it be management sitting at the office that had a feeling that in order to supervise employees, they had to be, close by and under their eye, if you will, and clocking in, to the actual employees as well, and becoming comfortable with these the media and the capabilities that, you know, being on video right now enables, that gives you a level of proximity without having to make the travel to that particular place. So I think it's a dynamic that's going to be affected for the long term. And it's not just this, right? I mean, there's a lot of other consumer habits that we are seeing that will be shifting. You know, the whole notion of ordering your groceries online, small percentage of people were doing that. Nowadays, everybody wants to.
Yeah.
In the environments where you have access to being able to do that, because we can't do that in every country around the world, but in the environments that you have access to being able to do that, that's a consumer shift. And that's one that will have long-standing, I think, implications as well. You know, we're talking about it from a television viewership or premium video viewership, whatever the screen is, as we have discussed here, whether it's second screens, whether it's the phone, whether it's video on demand, whatever the category is of how you interact with your video. You know, we've been talking about it from the perspective of the implications on viewership trends for the future. But yeah, I think all around, there are many, many categories that are going to be impacted by the experiences that we have had over, you know, the past 6 weeks or the 8 weeks, depending on where you're at, in the future few weeks and potentially months that we're, you know, living with these sensitivities. So it's an interesting question. I'm sure that will also lead to a shift of where there may be opportunities for certain types of advertisers and or opportunities for developing content that is, you know, most appealing. And again, I go back to my comment earlier. I think at the end of the day, from an advertising perspective, a messaging perspective, it's being nimble, having a level of creativity, and being able to execute quick. I think that's going to be a dramatic change. We're going to see organizations who used to take significantly longer period of time to think about and evaluate the messages and, or for that matter, the actual production of a, you know, series, let's say, or production of an episode, and say, no, we can do this faster, and look how we can do it even in the context of this environment. You see the, you know, television news industry and what the news industry has done to quickly adapt to this environment. You know, it isn't about walking into or commuting to the studio and, you know, spending the time with the makeup. No, it's getting on there, and we got messaging, and where everybody's, you know, kind of working from home, even from an anchor and reporter's perspective. So interesting dynamic that I think we'll see many, many implications from for the future.
That is a really, really interesting. And you touched on a point about new consumption habits and how some, for example, grocery delivery and e-commerce is growing. So I'm just going to make a very quick plug-in of our next webinar, which is all about e-commerce. So, you know, on advertising, you're getting the message, you're getting people to drive to your site or to your digital properties. How do you convert them? Because they cannot come to your retail store. So I'm putting the link on the chat. If you're interested in joining that webinar, you're gonna get some tips on how to do that. Sean, I have a question for you straight away from an anonymous attendee. Your thoughts on upfront timing, etc.
Yes, I'm kidding. Every upfront's unique. No year is like another year. This year obviously has got more variables and a few, you know, there's some unknowns. There's been, you know, disruptions in programming cycles. There's been sports that's had to, you know, move around, be canceled, that kind of thing. That being said, you know, with about 4,000 national advertisers, you know, and 141 new ones just last year, you know, and hundreds of DTCs that spend up to $4 billion. I think that the way that the upfront is going to unfold is exactly as the advertisers need to, with respect to when they're ready to jump, once they've got things in the place they need to be. You know, I think that the television companies are going to be ready to do upfront deals, if you want to call them that. And, you know, I think the fallacy about the upfront is this idea that it's like a store and a bell rings and suddenly buyers and sellers, you know, kick off this frenzy. It's a 52-year-a-week marketplace, right? And unregulated. You've got classes of advertisers right now who are ready to do deals for the upfront. You've got also classes of advertisers where there are a bunch of unknowns and they'll be ready in a month's time, 2 months' time, 3 months' time, 4 months' time. Whenever they are ready, the programmers, the distributors, the programmers will be ready to take care of their needs. It's always a marketer first, advertiser first market, because they've got to hit their business goals for the programmers to be effective and to be profitable. If they don't win in this game, they don't come back. So you got thousands of marketers who don't fall into easy tranches or classes. And the thing to do is to take care of those needs as soon as they're ready. That could be tomorrow. It could be May, it could be June, July, whenever they're ready, we're ready to do business with them. And that's as simple as it is.
Okay. I noticed it's 11 o'clock already, so we've covered the 1 hour. We still have almost everybody staying, right? We have 380 people already sign up, and I keep receiving questions. Is the panel okay staying a little bit longer and answering some of these questions?
Yeah, I've got a few minutes.
As long as they're easy ones.
As long as they're easy ones. So I'm going to throw you one now, Louis, to see. So, so I have a question from my dear friend Pablo in Miami. How do you see AVOD, your specific region, developing in the near term? Advertising video on demand for those who don't know the term. So AVOD, how do you see that developing in the near term?
Look, I think it's only going to go from strength to strength. One of the things that we're very focused on at the moment is helping to define that category. Because when you look at ad-supported video, I think it's the same all around the world. There are a couple of companies with sort of initials FB and G possibly that are quite powerful in this space, but they are not premium video distributors. They have user-generated content. They've got social media content. It's a very different experience, and so we're working very hard at the moment to create the same level of recognition for premium AVOD services as has been cultivated over the years for pay TV, as it's different to free-to-air television. And I'm very confident that that is a process that is going to happen, and it's going to continue to happen. And as I was saying a little bit earlier, I mean, all the evidence of what we're seeing is, I mean, there are only two ways of making money from video. It's subscription or it's advertising. Subscription is a great business model, but it's very hard to get 100% of all people to subscribe. But everybody is prepared to watch something for free, and that's where advertising obviously has from the beginning of our industry. That's where advertising comes into play. And so if people can put together the right content propositions with great premium content that are going to be ad supported, and it's critically, if it's the right content for that audience, it's got to be, it can't just be one size fits all international content, put it into every market and it's going to work everywhere. That's not going to be the case. But if you tailor make and put together a premium video curated service, market by market, and obviously the markets with bigger scale, you look at the Indonesias, the Indias, the Koreas, the Japans, the really big markets for population wise, I think AVOD is going to be huge. And I think we're right at the beginning of that revolution. I think it's going to be enormous.
Fantastic.
And I think just to build on that, I think, the winners are going to be those that have the content that are going to draw the eyeballs, right? Because it's no longer a matter of I paid for this subscription, I better turn it on and watch it. Otherwise, why am I paying? It's a matter of being in a competitive environment where advertising video on demand platforms are competing with a variety of other, some free, some paid platforms. And what's going to drive it at the end of the day is the quality of that premium content. And if you don't have content, the consumer's not going to be there.
And that's exactly the case in Europe too, where we have much smaller markets. There's lots of international and US players that are already active on the market. So if you want to watch American series, or if you want to watch American content, there's plenty of subscription VOD that you can connect to. But the AVOD is really the privilege of the broadcasters, the local broadcasters who hang on to the local excellent content and premium content. And that kind of AVOD has a great future. And that's where the future is actually.
Yeah, in the States, this is been up and running for years with respect to whether it's distributed via multi-channel platforms where they're every every programmer has got, you know, libraries of you know, video on demand that are distributed by the MVPDs. They're advertising rich, and it's been up and running. And with respect to subscription services, you know, already going at scale, advertisers support it. Yes, no. So again, we're, you know, we're in a dynamic here where, again, arm's length, moment's notice, you know, premium content, advertising, yes, some advertising, no, some pay, yes, some free, every variation, but it's all scale already.
It's all scale.
You know, it's very interesting because at the end of the day, and I remember when it was like, you know, pay TV was rising throughout the world, and broadcast was there, of course, very, very strong as it is still in many, many markets. But the fact that, you know, sort of the category of pay TV, calling it that broadly, whether it's cable or satellite, you know, however it's delivered nowadays through, you know, other broadband over the top kind of things. But what it did is it created a significant amount of fragmentation. And I think we're seeing the same thing now with these new platforms, you know, further fragmentation that will, again, provide new platforms and new ways to reach the ultimate consumer, and being creative with your, you know, your advertising and your targeting in any one of these particular you know, forms or methods of being able to reach the consumer. So it's further fragmentation in the context of the environment. And again, at the end of the day, I think, you know, the content wins. That's what's going to bring the eyeballs.
Yep. So there's a question for Sean, again anonymous. Will the data the VAV will be releasing on 5.5 be available to all?
To members, it'll be available
to members.
to members.
How do people become members?
So it's free to marketers, which is advertisers and agencies. So if you will, if you are on the buy side, is probably a, you know, a way to put it. Free. Our other types of members are our paid members, which are our programmers and everyone else in the, if you will, the sell side or supplier side of the video ecosystem. But if you're an advertiser, if you're an agency, you just authenticate with your email and you're a member, and you know, get the full report.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. We're still receiving questions. Let's try with another anonymous attendee, and this is about Latin America. Henry, we have a lot of questions coming from Latin America. When we look at younger audiences, we actually don't see the same explosion as targets over 18 in Latin America. We know we are providing premium video, and advertisers will notice that into the future. Do you think we are finally looking at a change of habit into how to consume premium content? What should be the approach for pay TV after COVID-19 with this target?
It's a great question.
That's a fantastic question. Yeah.
One is from the standpoint of the MVP, the companies that provide the service to the households. I think this is a reinforcement of the value proposition of what they bring, because of the increase in utilization, the fact that people are sampling a wider variety of content on different networks, if you will. So I think, you know, what we need now is that this spears a transition towards the other, you know, sort of platforms and the measurement of other platforms as well, so that we can include it. I think, you know, we've worked with Sean and the VAB and evaluating and learning from some of the things that are being done in the U.S. market in terms of advanced advertising, in terms of techniques and technologies to how to measure and how to capture the viewership in a much broader way. And we need to do that. We need to get that in Latin America. Because when you start looking at second screen viewing, when you start looking at the video on demand category, and we're working with Canoe right now to bring a pilot project of video on demand into the region. But when you start looking at delayed viewing, you know, we're talking about increases, and we have examples of several of our member companies that have gone through evaluations of this. We're looking about increases of 25, 30% on their viewership levels. And these are not being measured and captured. So I hope that this is indeed a, you know, sort of a launch pad for us to be able to enable these advanced advertising, both, you know, tools and measurement capabilities throughout the region, much like they have, whether in the US and in Europe as well. And I'm sure, you know, Caddy can speak to it. But
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So Mari is asking again how to become a member of the VAV. I suggest go to the THEVAB.com, and you know there's a chance to register over there. So it's pretty straightforward. I've done it in the past. I have a
Why
question
is
from
nobody
Jim.
asking how to join Avia? It's not fair.
Well, apparently it's easier to join Avia than the VAV, because there's questions about how to join the VAV. So Jim is asking, when advertisers hear the term premium video, do you think they connect that with the television set or purely digital TV? That's a question about the term premium video that we've been using throughout this conversation.
I'll answer it really simply in that, you know, there are people who would put up, you know, their own UGC and label it premium, you know, and I think, you know.
And by UGC, you mean?
User-generated content.
Okay.
I mean, there are people who would, you know, shoot their YouTube video of them juggling oranges and say, this is premium content. And for their girlfriend, it might be. At the end of the day, what we've come down to in the States is, you know, it's not standardization per se, but just for shorthand, so we all know what we're talking about. We now use the term multi-screen TV. We just find that that's
multi-screen TV. Okay.
When we're talking about the best stuff, the best content, and we're talking about, you know, ad-supported TV, you know, we're within that. It's really simple. People used to say TV, but then they'd say, oh, but I mean also mobile, and now it's really simple. We've been really getting on as a practice, and it's been well adopted. A simple handle: multi-screen TV, which inherently, it's self-evidently is premium content.
Fantastic. Louis, you just started a trend of questions, because now they're asking, how do we sign up to your groups? So I'm just gonna go top to down. So Kari, Louis, Henry, how do you get people to sign up to your memberships?
For ECTA, unfortunately, it's a quite close circle. You have to be an advertising sales company and have the monetization of content as your main activity to be a member. Now, there's plenty of ways to have access to some of our information, but you can't really become a member unless you are the ad sales company of a TV broadcaster or a radio broadcaster. And when I say TV, it's that total multi-screen TV.
But there's some access to the data, you know, some of the data that you produce for people.
Some of it. And then if it's available publicly, then it's on our website, which is egta.com. And then you have all the publication, everything that's freely accessible, you can access from our website.
Okay, egta.com. Louis.
So we're not as prescriptive as that. I mean, we see ourselves representing the broader television and video ecosystem. And our membership comes from every part of that. So it comes from the advertising side, it comes from the subscription side, it comes from the broadcasters, it comes from the technology players who deliver the signals, it comes from the consultants and the researchers who provide insight. So we're basically, as long as you are part of the ecosystem of premium video or multi-screen TV, as Sean just said, then you're welcome to become a member. So it's perfectly straightforward.
I can give you a little more detail than I did before. As I said, in terms of our membership, you know, free membership is, you know, advertisers, marketers, agencies, and again, authenticated. But we also have got several classes of membership. We have premium members, which are, you know, the larger distributors and programmings. We have tiers of professional members. Basically, if you are anywhere inside of that video ecosystem, we've got one of 5 membership for you, and, you know, we'll take care of you. Just, you know, get on the site and we'll take it from there.
Excellent. Henry.
Maybe one word saying we haven't mentioned this. There's also an entity which is maybe more of an informal entity called the Global TV Group, of which the VAB, LAMAC, ECTA, not yet Avia, but we need to talk, Louis. We've all come together under that umbrella organization. By the way, at the moment, the presidency lies with Lindsay Clay, ThinkBox in the UK, but the next president as of 2021 will be Sean from the VAB. And as an organization,
I was just thinking about that this morning.
So as an organization, we're there to promote that multi-screen TV environment and why advertisers should be looking at TV for all its strengths. And so it's also a group you can contact, check the website. and all of the individual organizations can help provide useful information to anyone from the marketing and advertising community.
Okay, Henry, how do they sign up for LAMAC or get access to some of the data? A lot of these people are looking for the arguments that we've been sharing here to be able to continue selling.
Sure, and LAMAC is the Latin America Media Advertising Council, so you can just go to lamac.com, lamac.com, and get all the info right from there. And basically, our membership consists of our founding.
It's lamac.org, is not .com.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes.
lamac.org.
Org, yes.
So our membership, consists of some of the worldwide largest media companies. That is the membership. That is the funding membership, if you will. So individuals that work in the industry and various sectors of the industry can receive a variety of different information. We reach out to them. We're in the process of doing weekly audience reports that are being analyzed by our research team and present that weekly. There's also a compilation of stories that are of impact as it relates to the COVID-19 environment and advertising. So very, very topical things that our marketing team is putting together. So there's a variety of things that we do, and we send out to any of the people who register with us, and it's on a free basis. So come on out to lamac.org and check that out. I did see a question floating by, Gerardo, that I thought needed to be answered. The question.
Go ahead.
Premium video, and what is premium video? How do you define premium video? And it really, at the end of the day, it's about the quality of the content, the investment levels that are made on the kinds of content that our membership provides are significant investment levels, and therefore create an improved. A much improved production value above and beyond what you get from, as Sean was talking about, the user generated content, or the UGC. So I don't know, maybe my colleagues can help to define it further, but I think it has a lot to do with just the level of investments, the quality of what's being put forth in premium video, whether it be from the production values, from the writing, the storyline, the individuals who are actually either acting or on screen, talent, etc.
Fantastic.
The only word that I would add to that description, Henry, would be curated. So
Right.
all of those services and platforms that have premium video have either created that premium video at great expense themselves, or they've licensed it from somebody. But they have made a conscious decision that this is a piece of video that I want on my service. So that's very different from a technology platform where you can upload any piece of content that you want, and there'll be good stuff and there'll be bad stuff and there'll be everything in between. Our stuff is curated.
That's fantastic. Henry, a question from Alfredo Pedroso. You mentioned the need for advertisers to be nimble. Does this decentralization and focus on local media buying square with that? Would some degree of centralization help advertisers act more nimbly? And I think this is an interesting question also for, not only for Henry, I think this is an interesting question in general, centralization versus decentralization, local versus national.
I mean, we play with that all the time, right? Because you've got budgets that sit in different markets throughout this vast region, of over 20 countries. So we're dealing with those issues all the time. Could one or the other lead to greater nimbleness? I think it depends on the company. I guess, if the organization can act quicker on a localized basis and in a more relevant perspective, yeah, it'll be faster. But if an organization has a brand value message to put out that is consistent across a variety of different countries within a particular region or throughout the world, then there's nothing better than to be able to have that, national creative and again, it goes back to, can that organization move quickly? Can that, be nimble and just develop new messaging and new advertising campaigns? So I think can work either way to be effective.
And the importance of context around advertising being what it is, to add to the efficiency of the advertising, I think the contact with the local broadcasters, network companies is also vital. So yes, some elements might be centralized, but it's much more efficient when you have the face-to-face and the local conversations.
I think the key is to be dealing with companies that have good world-class capabilities in any size or any region or any type of advertising that you want to do under the same parent company, the same roof. And, with, almost 200, local television markets, quote unquote, and then, neighborhoods and zones well defined under that. I mean, inside of one, world-class parent company ownership group in the States, you can own 2 pizzerias and get, exact specific down to, zip code, zone, world-class looking advertising that they'll help you produce. And under that same parent company, you can get, designated marketing advertising. You can, get national advertising. You can get, data-driven products. And I think that one of the greatest things about ownership consolidation is that, regardless of your, 2-store owner or you are Walmart, these companies have got the capabilities, the data, the expertise, to take care of you. And I think that's been one of of all the, M&A aside from the libraries and programming, is the ability to, not take care of a few hundred advertisers or, a few thousand, but, limitless number of advertisers where, the dollar from the person at the local pizzeria works as hard as Walmart's dollar does.
Yeah. Excellent. Guys, I think we're coming to an end. I will want to just go around all of you and let you say some final words, kind of like as a takeaway from this. I would also like the attendees, if you just write in the chat, what is 2 things. What is your main takeaway from the conversation? And also, it would be very helpful for us. We're putting together these webinars every 2 weeks. So if you could type in topics that would be interesting to you to hear about in the future, we'll try to put together a panel or a presentation or a webinar that's going to be helpful. And this is the time I'm just going to do a very, very quickly plug in and say, I'm sharing with you right now the page on our website. We started this a few weeks ago when COVID started, and we have here some of the past webinars that are related to sales, they're related to LinkedIn social selling, they're related to top trends in digital advertising. Right now we're talking about TV advertising. If you come to our website, wsidigitalboost.com, you can find those. Those are free. This one is going to be up there now. And I've also shared right now the link on the chat for a future webinar, which is about converting people to customers, conversion rate optimization, basically. All right. So with that plugin, which is the only plugin that we're going to do, I'd like to go around with Kari, Louis, Henry, and Sean, and get them some final words on this topic. Thank you so much. I'll start with Kari.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you to everyone for staying on so long. If there's one message I want to leave, is that maybe there's been this tradition or temptation to keep on opposing TV as the TV in the living room to online video properties as if that were not TV. I think the TV we're in, as Sean just said, is multi-screen TV, and that premium content on that multi-screen environment is one of the strongest way of communicating ever. It's great for content, it's great for advertising messages. So let's see our industry for what it is. It's multi-screen premium content, and that means taking it along with creativity, measurement solutions that will allow us to just grasp that entire industry for what it is.
Thanks, Kari. Louis?
I'd sum all of that up. Henry was asked a question a little bit earlier about, with everybody working from home, will some of these sort of habits stick, and will that sort of have long-term impacts on the way content's consumed and advertisers advertise around it? I agreed with everything that Henry said, but I think the one thing, at least in the short term, is that when this is all over, all of those people who spend all of their time wanting to be able to work from home will never have been so happy to be able to get back into the office and spend some quality time behind a desk at work. So I'm looking forward to that day myself.
That's fantastic. Before we go with you, Henry, I just want to read a comment here. Somebody is saying, great content, guys. Took 4 pages of notes just because they aren't selling now doesn't mean they aren't doing business. Performance-based to longer-term connection to customers. So I just wanted to tell you, that's a very positive feedback, Henry.
That's awesome. I also see our viewership levels are declining here a little bit. We were up.
It's natural. I mean, and that's because we've gone past the hour. We've gone past the hour.
People
That's
have other Zoom calls to get to. I understand.
Of course, they have lives.
So listen, just to summarize, I guess a couple of the points. The aspect of the long-term focus, the importance of brand building. Doing that gives you strength and should lead to increased market shares coming out of it. The aspect of adapting messaging, at least for the sort of short to midterm and potentially a little bit longer term future here, but being creative and being nimble. And then recognizing that premium video in the multi-screen fashion, as Caddy and Louis were relating to it, the share is up significantly in whichever screen and way the viewer is selecting to look at it. So it's a wonderful opportunity for great brand alignment and being selective in terms of who the target audience is, and then of course in the context of the increased audience, a great value from the perspective of the advertising investment.
Excellent, Henry. Thank you so much, Sean.
Yeah, one of the first questions that was asked by the audience I thought was important, and we came back to it several times, which is, why should the advertiser get back into advertising now? And I thought of a tennis analogy, because this is, what I kind of want to leave for myself with this session was, and people who are in the top 3 players in the world play 350 days a year, right? And for somebody who's not in the top 100 who's decided to take a day off, there's an expression, right? They're going to take the day off. They're going to go to the beach. And so they're just going to play 349 or 340 days, not 350. And the expression their coach is going to say to them is, somewhere your opponent is practicing. And when you meet them, you will lose because they will be better prepared for it than you. And I think that's true now for if there's an advertiser who is, on the fence, going to take a quarter off, going to do a whole lot of wait and see, has people in his category that are already doing, messaging, brand building message, COVID message. The idea of being dormant while others are practicing. In the long term, when you meet them, you'll lose because they'll be better prepared than you. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I would just say this was a fantastic webinar. I think the one thing that I take away from here is that we should not, as a world, as a community, we should not go into scarcity mode, right? We should not go into, oh my God, I'm not going to do anything and wait until this passes. There's lots of opportunities to engage with people from a perspective, I think, as Kari mentioned, in sense of what's important to them right now. And, brand messages take a second tier here. It's more important about being relevant to what the audience is going through right now. But it's a wonderful opportunity too to elevate brand connection and to elevate brand sentiment and to be really relevant to your audience and demonstrate that you care. And if you can do that in a way that it's emotionally intelligent, that adds value, and that it's with the right tone, you can come out of this as an advertiser with a much stronger brand and with a brighter future. And for some verticals, with an opportunity to reach audiences that otherwise you would have never been able to reach. So thank you so much, everybody. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. We have lots of great comments. The video, lots of questions about the video. The video is going to be shared. You will receive an email afterwards. Now you're in the database because you register, so you'll get a notice when the video is being shared. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day and stay safe, okay?
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you, Gerardo.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Gerardo.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.